Hello and welcome to the first of what I hope will be many and hopefully a full season of Strike, the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast with a British twist. They're recaps of the new Netflix series, The Punisher, which went live today, a few hours ago. I've had to wait until the end of the day to be able to start, but here I am. I've just watched the first episode. We're going to do these live. Straight after each episode, and just kind of give you a recap of what we're doing, of what we're seeing. Kind of, this first episode is a little bit different because it's kind of a setup for the whole series, so it's going to be a little bit different for this first one. But I'll go into it. First episode called 3 a.m. And we open with Frank in flashback. In fact, back to when his family were alive. For those that have watched Daredevil, will know the backstory that Frank Castle, the man that is now the Punisher, has become very different. He's not the character that we knew in Daredevil, but it's been caused kind of by what happened to his family in Daredevil. His family got killed after he returned from being in the Marine Corps. He became a very violent man, a very troubled man, and he's still very much that person when we meet him at the start. But kind of opens with that flashback of him teaching his son guitar, while also interspersed with current day of him playing the same song but by himself, which is very sad, and it's a very melancholy way to open the series, I think. But it very quickly becomes something different. It very quickly becomes about the Frank we know from Daredevil. It starts off opening with him taking on some biker gangs. He takes those out first. He's very much the Punisher still at this point. He's emblazoned with the skull on his vest. It then sets up what Frank is about very early on, I think. For those that haven't seen Daredevil, this first episode very much is a separate thing. You don't need to have seen Daredevil to kind of know what's going on. But it then sets off. He takes on from a distance with his long range rifle. He takes out a Mexican cartel crime lord, very much in typical Frank style, and it kind of leaves you at this point kind of thinking, oh, he's just taking people out, that's all he's doing, but then it moves into the final bit before the opening credits, in fact, of a guy in an airport kind of telling someone that he's the only one that survived. He's managed to get away from it, but then you see Frank enter and this bloke is kind of hiding in a toilet at this point, and Frank comes in and takes him out, and this is when we learn that Frank has actually been taking out all the people that he believed were culpable for his family's death, and at this point we then learn that will be it. He's no longer the Punisher. The skull vest gets burnt. He's not around anymore. And we go into the opening credits. I think the credits really signify everything that Frank is. I'm not one to read into credits. People on the show with me, Tony, I know, hasn't particularly liked any of the credits since Daredevil. I don't think this is anything spectacular, but as I said, it does give you everything that you need to know about Frank, I think. Then the show fully opens 6 months further down the line, and Frank has actually stayed away from a life of crime. He's now become a builder, or as such, he's working on a building site, and very much keeps himself to himself, knocking things down. He hasn't given a great impression to the people around him. He's not really spoken. They think there might be some issues with him, which obviously we know there are issues with Frank. but not the issues that they believe he's got. But we can tell that Frank is definitely very much still facing those demons that is the death of his family caused the murder of his family. Sadly, he is still coping with that. His co-workers definitely get on his wrong side very early on. And I think that's what the whole episode kind of is about. There's one co-worker that tries to stay on his good side, Donnie, new guy on the building site, and we'll learn more about him as we go further in. We also learn that Frank has been going to kind of veteran self-help groups to cope with the traumas of being at war. Obviously, we learned in Daredevil that he was affected by what he saw in the war. In the wars, should I say? We don't know how many times he was involved in the war. I'm sure we'll learn a bit more about his past in the war. At this point, we also meet the cops that will obviously end up coming after Frank some point in this series. I don't know when they will cross paths. We kind of learn later on in the episode that one of them may have caught Frank out. We'll see, but that was more to do with some of the friends that Frank has made over the years. We know these two cops are going to cause problems for him. They also seem to both have something to hide. We learn that the female cop lost her partner due to, again, something to do with the war out in the Middle East. But we also we learn a little bit more about Frank's co-workers. We learn that they have got a side of themselves that isn't completely trustworthy. One of them owes money, and is going to go after they're going to go after a big job to make that money back. They're going to take on the big gang in town, the new gang called the Nanos, and I don't think that particularly works out well for them. They take on Donnie after one of their co-workers, and one of the people that were going to be involved in the job gets hurt. Donnie gets involved and messes the whole thing up. When that happens, they take Donnie back to the building site and decide that they're going to take him out, basically. After the Nanos work out who Donnie is, they find his driving licence and know who he is, so they're going to come after him, and they'll connect him with people that are working with him. So they try and take him out. They tried to kill him by putting him in the cement mixer, only to come across Mr. Castle, and I think he's in his typical unforgiving mood. Once he realises something wrong's going on, he definitely isn't very forgiving. And in fact, I think we see the full force of the Punisher for the first time in the series at this point, and he takes them all out, saves Donnie, and tells Donnie to get out of town. The Nanos kind of then set their sights on trying to take Donnie out, only to then be taken down by Frank, in very similar fashion to how he took out the gang at the beginning of Daredevil Season 2. It's very, very similar fashion.